The hallways of Wellington Music Academy fell quiet as evening settled in. Most students had left for the day, their music cases slung over shoulders, chatting as they walked out into the cool autumn air. Only a few dedicated souls remained, their melodies floating through the building like ghosts. Mei Lin pushed her cleaning cart slowly down the polished corridor, pausing outside practice room 7. Inside, a young girl struggled with a difficult passage on her violin, playing the same 16 notes over and over. Mei stood still, listening carefully. The girl was rushing the middle section, not giving the notes enough space to breathe. She had seen this student before, a serious girl with round glasses who always stayed late. Mei continued her work, collecting trash from the bin outside the room, but her ear remained tuned to the music. After the 5th attempt, she heard the girl groan in frustration, followed by the thud of sheet music hitting the floor. Mei hesitated, then gently knocked on the door. The girl looked up, surprised to see the middle-aged cleaning lady. "I'm sorry to bother," Mei said, her accent still noticeable after 15 years in this country. "But maybe try to think of the middle part like taking a breath between words." "Not so fast." The girl stared at her, confused but curious. "Like this?" She played again, slowing the troublesome section. "Yes." Mei nodded, a small smile forming. "Better. Music needs air to live, just like us." The girl looked at her strangely, as if seeing the housekeeper for the first time. "How did you know that would help?" Mei's eyes dropped to her cart. "Just something I heard teachers say." She quickly moved on, mentally scolding herself for the interaction. It wasn't her place to offer advice. At 43, Mei had learned to blend into the background. Her uniform, gray with the academy logo, helped her become nearly invisible to the wealthy students and distinguished teachers who filled these halls. She preferred it that way. Invisibility meant safety, stability. The academy paid better than her previous cleaning jobs, and they didn't ask too many questions. As she worked her way through the building, Mei allowed herself to absorb the music that lingered in each room. The grand piano in the recital hall, the cellos in the orchestra room, the flutes from the wind ensemble. Music filled the building like oxygen, and sometimes when nobody was looking, she breathed it in deeply. She saved the practice rooms for last, taking her time to dust the shelves lined with metronomes and sheet music. Room 12 was her favorite, a small space with perfect acoustics and a window that faced east, catching the morning sun. Here she worked most carefully, wiping fingerprints from the music stands, arranging chairs to precise angles. "Still here, Mei?" The night guard, Mr. Patel, stood at the doorway, keys jingling. "Almost done," she replied, straightening up. "Just finishing room 12. "You always spend extra time in this one," he observed with a friendly smile. "Got a soft spot for it?" She shrugged. "It's peaceful." Mr. Patel had been kind to her since her first day 3 years ago. Unlike some of the staff, he actually saw her, greeted her by name, sometimes brought her a cup of tea during her dinner break. "Well, don't stay too late. They don't pay overtime," he reminded her, continuing his rounds. When he was gone, Mei moved to the small cabinet in the corner. Inside was the academy's collection of practice instruments, violins and violas of varying sizes for students who couldn't bring their instruments every day. Her fingers hovered over a weathered case, a beginner's violin that had seen better days. She looked over her shoulder, listening for footsteps. Hearing none, she carefully lifted the case and placed it on the table. Her heart quickened as she unlatched it, revealing the simple instrument inside, not a fine one like those played by the academy students, but good enough. Mei didn't remove it, just looked at it lying there, her fingers tracing the air above its curves. Sometimes this was all she allowed herself, a moment of remembrance, of connection to what once had been. Other nights, when the building was completely empty, she might take it out, hold it properly, maybe even tune it. But never play. She hadn't played in almost 20 years. Tonight she simply closed the case again, tucking the memory away. There was no use dwelling on the past. She had a small apartment to return to, bills to pay, and an early shift at her second job tomorrow morning at the coffee shop 8 blocks away. Her cleaning cart made a rhythmic squeak as she pushed it toward the storage closet. The sound echoed in the empty hallway, creating a steady beat that her mind automatically filled with music. An old folk song her grandmother had taught her when she was only 5, before anyone realized she had talent. As she hung up her uniform and changed into her street clothes, Mei caught sight of a poster on the wall announcing the upcoming winter showcase. The academy's most talented students would perform, and wealthy donors would attend, checkbooks ready to support promising young musicians. She had cleaned up after these events before, picking up discarded programs, wiping champagne spills from the lobby floor, emptying plates of barely touched expensive finger food. Outside, the night air hit her face with a sharp chill. May pulled her worn jacket tighter and began the 20-minute walk to her apartment. She couldn't afford the bus fare if she wanted to put aside money for her nephew's schooling back home. Her sister's son was smart, showed promise in mathematics. She sent what she could each month, determined that he would have the opportunities she had lost. Her neighborhood was a stark contrast to the academy's manicured grounds. Here, streetlights flickered and apartment buildings crowded together like tired people leaning on each other for support. Her building had a broken front step that the landlord had promised to fix 3 months ago. She navigated it carefully, then climbed 5 flights of stairs because the elevator had been out of service since summer. Her apartment was small but clean, a habit she couldn't break even in her own space. One room served as bedroom, living room and dining room with a tiny kitchen alcove and bathroom so small she could barely turn around in it. But the window faced east, like room 12 at the academy, and caught the morning light in a way that made her feel less alone. She set water to boil for tea and opened her small refrigerator. Leftovers from 2 nights ago would do for dinner. As she waited for her food to heat, she turned on her second-hand radio, tuning it carefully until she found the classical station. A violin concerto filled her tiny apartment, Vivaldi, The Four Seasons, Winter. Her hand stilled as she listened. The soloist was good, technically precise, but May could hear what was missing. The passion beneath the precision, the story within the notes. Her old teacher, Master Wu, would have said the performer was playing the notes but not the music. Master Wu had been the one to discover her in the small town where she grew up. He had come to judge a school music competition and had heard May play, a 10-year-old girl with a borrowed violin and untrained hands. "This one has the fire inside," he had told her parents. "She plays from someplace deep." For 8 years after that, she had studied with him, traveling 3 hours by bus every Saturday for lessons. Her parents had sacrificed to buy her a better instrument, to pay for sheet music, to give her time to practice instead of working in the family store. By 18, she had been accepted to the National Conservatory, a path that should have led to the concert stage. But then her father fell ill. The family store began failing. Her mother couldn't manage alone. As the oldest daughter, there had been no question about what she must do. She had set down her violin and picked up account books, customer orders, inventory lists. By the time her father died 2 years later, the conservatory opportunity was gone. The family had debts. Her younger siblings needed support. Then came marriage to a kind man who didn't understand her longing for music but offered stability. Then children, then widowhood, then the difficult decision to leave her homeland for better opportunities abroad. Somewhere in all that, her violin had been sold to pay for her daughter's schooling. Now her children were grown, making their own way back home. She was here, starting over at middle age, her hands no longer shaped to the violin but to mops and brooms and cleaning rags. May sipped her tea, letting Vivaldi's notes wash over her. Sometimes, when music played, her fingers moved of their own accord, remembering positions on an invisible fingerboard, muscle memory that refused to fade completely. Tonight she kept her hands still, wrapped around the warm cup. Tomorrow would be another day of the same routine. She would rise before dawn, work her coffee shop shift, then head to the academy for the evening cleaning. She would fade into the background of other people's lives, a nameless figure keeping their spaces tidy while they pursued their dreams. But for now, in her small apartment with the classical radio playing, she allowed herself to remember who she had been, who perhaps in some quiet corner of her heart she still was. Her tea grew cold as the Vivaldi ended. An announcer's voice mentioned the upcoming live broadcast of the National Symphony, featuring a rising star violinist. May switched off the radio. There was no use in listening to what might have been. She had long ago accepted her path. She didn't know that in a few weeks' time her carefully constructed routine would shatter, that music would find her again in a way she never expected, that the hands that now cleaned would remember their true purpose. For now she simply washed her teacup, set out her clothes for tomorrow and prepared for sleep, unaware that her story was about to change. The notice appeared on the staff bulletin board on a Tuesday morning. Printed on thick cream paper with gold lettering, it announced the Wellington Music Academy's annual Benefactors Gala, to be held in 3 weeks' time. May barely glanced at it as she wiped fingerprints from the glass case beside it. Such events had nothing to do with cleaning staff. Exciting, isn't it? Ms. Chen, the receptionist, paused beside her. The Harrington family is hosting this year. They're doubling the scholarship fund. May nodded politely. The Harrington name was spoken with reverence at Wellington. Their donations had built the East Wing practice rooms, funded the summer program, and paid for countless talented but poor students to study here. Pictures of Richard Harrington, tall, silver-haired, with the confident smile of the very wealthy, hung in the main hallway. Extra hours for you, I'm afraid, Ms. Chen added. All hands on deck before and after. Director Wang wants the place spotless. I don't mind, May replied. Extra hours meant extra pay, and her nephew's university application fees were due soon. Over the next week, the academy transformed. Fresh flowers appeared in the lobby each morning. Workers polished the grand chandelier in the concert hall. Students walked the halls with tense faces, practicing at all hours. The lucky few chosen to perform for the benefactors felt the weight of opportunity on their shoulders. On Thursday afternoon, as May mopped the marble lobby floor, the main doors swung open. Richard Harrington strode in, followed by a younger man who shared his height but little of his dignity. Behind them trailed a small group of well-dressed people, laughing too loudly for the hallowed halls of a music academy. Director Wang materialized as if by magic, hurrying from his office. Mr. Harrington, what a pleasant surprise. We weren't expecting you until next week. Just showing some friends the space, Richard Harrington said, his voice carrying the easy authority of a man used to being listened to, making sure everything's on track for the gala. Of course, Director Wang bowed slightly. Would you like a tour? Mee kept her head down, focusing on her work. She knew to make herself invisible when important people were around. She moved her mop in steady, quiet strokes, backing away toward the wall. And who's this? The younger man's voice cut through the formal conversation. May looked up to find him watching her, an odd smile on his face. Cleaning staff, Director Wang said dismissively. Now about the program for the evening. No, wait. The younger man stepped closer to May. What's your name? She straightened, clutching her mop. Violin, sir? Thomas Harrington, he introduced himself with an exaggerated bow. My father's money built half this place. Do you like working here, Violin? Something in his tone made her uncomfortable. His friends had gathered behind him, watching with amused expressions. One woman whispered something that made another laugh. Yes, sir. It's a good job. Do you like music? Thomas asked, circling her slowly. She nodded, keeping her eyes on the floor. What kind? All kinds, she answered softly, wishing they would move on. Do you play an instrument, Mei Lin, from the cleaning staff? Thomas asked, emphasizing her position in a way that made his friends smirk. Director Wang laughed nervously. Thomas, please, we should continue the tour. I'm curious, Thomas insisted. Well, do you play? May hesitated. I used to. Long ago. What instrument? Thomas pressed. Violin. The word felt strange in her mouth, like naming a loved one long dead. Thomas's eyebrows shot up in exaggerated surprise. The violin! How sophisticated for a cleaning lady. His friends chuckled. And where did you perform? Carnegie Hall? The Sydney Opera House. Heat rose to May's face at the mockery. I never performed professionally. What a waste, Thomas said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. Then his face brightened with what seemed like sudden inspiration. Father, I have a wonderful idea. Why don't we add a special performance to the gala program? Richard Harrington looked suspicious. What are you suggesting? I think our guests would appreciate seeing how Wellington brings music to everyone, even the cleaning staff. Thomas gestured grandly toward May. Let's have Mei Lin play for us at the gala. May's stomach dropped. No, I couldn't possibly. That's not necessary, Director Wang interjected quickly. We have many talented students who... But this would be special, Thomas insisted. Think of it, Father. Wellington Music Academy, where even the cleaning staff can play. It's perfect for your whole Music for Everyone campaign. Richard Harrington studied his son with cool eyes, then looked at May. It's an interesting idea. What do you think, Ms. Lin? Would you be willing to play a short piece for our guests? All eyes turned to her. The mop handle felt slippery in her sweating palms. I haven't played in many years, sir. I would embarrass the academy. Nonsense, Thomas said. Just a simple piece, something appropriate for your skill level. The way he said it made it clear he expected her to fail spectacularly. His friends exchanged glances, barely containing their amusement. I'm sorry, May said firmly. I can't. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Richard Harrington's expression hardened slightly. Director Wang looked panicked. Well, Thomas broke the silence, that's disappointing. Father invests millions in this place and we can't get one simple performance from the staff. Makes you wonder about the leadership here, doesn't it? Director Wang paled. Perhaps we could discuss this in my office. No need, Thomas waved dismissively. We should continue the tour. I want to see the scholarship wall. I hear my name's on it now. As they walked away, Director Wang shot May a look of barely contained fury. She stood frozen, the wet mop dripping onto her shoes. That evening, as she was finishing her shift, Director Wang called her into his office. She had never been inside before. It was large, with dark wood furniture and walls lined with photos of famous musicians who had visited the academy. Sit down, May. His voice was controlled but cold. She perched on the edge of a chair, hands folded in her lap. Do you understand what happened today? He asked. The young Mr. Harrington was making fun of me, she said quietly. No. Director Wang's hand slapped his desk. What happened is that you embarrassed this institution in front of its most important benefactor. I'm sorry, sir, but the Harringtons fund half our scholarship program. Without them, dozens of students would lose their opportunities here. He leaned forward. Do you understand what I'm saying? Families depend on that money. Careers begin because of that money. May felt sick. What do you want me to do? Thomas Harrington has requested that you perform at the gala. His father seemed intrigued by the idea. He sighed heavily. I need you to do it. But sir, I told you I haven't played in years. I'll embarrass everyone. Then practice, he snapped. We have 3 weeks. You can use practice room 12 after hours. I'll have Ms. Chen arrange for an instrument. He softened his tone slightly. Look, just play something simple. A folk tune, a beginner's piece. No one expects brilliance from you. The words stung, but May understood the reality of her position. And if I refuse? Director Wang met her eyes. Then I'll have to reconsider your employment here. We need staff who contribute positively to the Academy's reputation. The threat hung in the air between them. May thought of her apartment, her bills, the money she sent home each month. She couldn't lose this job. I'll do it, she said finally. But I can't promise it will be good. That's not my concern. He turned to his computer, dismissing her. Ms. Chen will add you to the program. Just don't make a scene. May walked home that night in a daze, the autumn wind cutting through her thin jacket unnoticed. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions, fear, anger, and buried deep beneath them a tiny flicker of something else. Something she hadn't felt in years. That night she dreamt of her old violin teacher, Master Wu. In the dream, he stood before her, his stern face creased with disappointment. You abandoned your gift, he said. Now it has found you again. She woke before dawn, her heart pounding. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, her fingers ached for strings. The next evening, Ms. Chen met her after her shift with a key to practice room 12 and a violin case. It's not a great instrument, she said apologetically. Just a student model. But it's in tune. Thank you, May said, taking the case carefully. It felt both foreign and familiar in her hands, like meeting a childhood friend after many years apart. Ms. Chen hesitated before leaving. For what it's worth, I think what Thomas Harrington did was cruel. But, she lowered her voice, his father doubled the scholarship fund after yesterday. 20 more students will get to study here next year. After Ms. Chen left, May sat alone in practice room 12, the violin case on her lap. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside lay a simple violin, nothing special but well-maintained. She lifted it gently, feeling its weight, running her fingers over its curves. The touch of the wood against her skin sent memories flooding through her. Hours of practice. The pride in her parents' eyes. Master Wu's rare smile when she played a difficult passage perfectly. Slowly, she raised the violin to her shoulder, adjusting her posture by instinct. When she drew the bow across the strings for the first time, the sound was terrible, scratchy and thin like a door creaking open after years of being locked. She winced but tried again, and again. By midnight her fingers were raw, her shoulder ached, and she could barely play a simple scale without mistakes. But as she carefully returned the violin to its case, May felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Purpose. She had 3 weeks to prepare for the most frightening performance of her life. 3 weeks to rediscover what she had buried for 20 years. 3 weeks until Thomas Harrington and his friends would laugh at her failure, unless somehow she could prove them wrong. The first week of practice left May's fingers blistered and her spirit broken. After her cleaning shift each night, she would lock herself in practice room 12, struggling through the most basic exercises. Her left hand had forgotten how to form chords. Her right arm couldn't maintain steady pressure on the bow. The beautiful sound she remembered making as a girl had been replaced by screeching, faltering notes that made her wince. "This is hopeless," she whispered to the empty room on the 7th night, setting the violin down. Her reflection in the window stared back at her, a tired, middle-aged woman in a cleaner's uniform, dark circles under her eyes. What had she been thinking? That 20 years away from music could be overcome in 3 weeks? She packed away the violin, her movements slow with defeat. Tomorrow she would tell Director Wang she couldn't do it. Better to lose her job than to humiliate herself in front of hundreds of people. But as she walked home through the quiet streets, memories surfaced, her first recital at age 11, how her hands had shaken so badly she'd nearly dropped her bow. "Fear is the mind giving up before the body has a chance to try," Master Wu had told her. "Let your fingers remember what your thoughts have forgotten." The next morning, May called the coffee shop and asked for a week of unpaid leave. It was a financial sacrifice she could ill afford, but she needed the time. Then she returned to the academy, not as a cleaner, but as a student of her former self. She began differently this time. Instead of forcing herself through pieces she once played, she started with the basics, the way Master Wu had taught her as a child. Simple scales, careful finger placements, proper posture. She spent an entire day just holding the violin correctly, retraining her body to remember. On the 3rd day, Mr. Patel knocked gently on the practice room door. "I've been hearing you play," he said. "Thought you might need this." He handed her a small jar of ointment for her raw fingertips. "My wife plays sitar. Says this helps with the pain." May thanked him, touched by the kindness. "Do I disturb you with the noise?" He smiled. "It's getting better every day. Yesterday I actually recognized the tune." His encouragement gave her the push to continue. That afternoon she ventured into a simple piece she had learned as a teenager, a folk melody from her homeland that required more feeling than technical skill. For the first time she closed her eyes as she played, letting the music guide her rather than forcing each note. When she finished, she heard soft applause. Miss Chen stood in the doorway. "That was lovely," she said. "I had no idea you could actually play." "I'm very rusty," May admitted. "Better than rusty." "That was real music." Ms. Chen hesitated. "I shouldn't tell you this, but there's a betting pool in the administration office. Thomas Harrington started it. People are wagering on how badly you'll fail at the gala." May felt her face grow hot with humiliation and anger. "How much is the bet?" $5,000 so far. Thomas put in $3,000 himself. For a moment, May couldn't breathe. $5,000 was more than she made in 3 months, and they were betting on her failure, treating her struggle like entertainment. "Who's betting I'll succeed?" she asked quietly. Ms. Chen looked down. "No one yet, but..." She pulled out her wallet and handed May $50. "Put this down for me. I'll take those odds." After Ms. Chen left, May stood in the practice room, the money clutched in her hand. Anger coursed through her, but beneath it was something stronger. Determination. She placed the violin under her chin again and began to play, pushing through the pain in her fingers. That night, she didn't go home. She slept on the small couch in the practice room's corner, waking before dawn to continue. Something had shifted inside her. This was no longer about keeping her job or avoiding humiliation. It was about reclaiming a part of herself that had been buried for too long. By the end of the 2nd week, May could play simple pieces without major errors. Her muscle memory was returning, her fingers growing calloused again. But she needed more than technical ability if she wanted to silence Thomas Harrington's mockery. She needed to find the fire that Master Wu had seen in her all those years ago. In her tiny apartment, May dug through her few possessions until she found an old photo album. There, wedged between family portraits, was a faded newspaper clipping, a review of a youth concert where she had performed as a teenager. The standout performance came from young Lin Mei Hua, whose interpretation of Mendelssohn showed remarkable emotional maturity and technical promise. Mendelssohn. His violin concerto in A minor had once been her signature piece, the most difficult work she had mastered before leaving music behind. It was far beyond what anyone would expect a cleaning lady to play at a charity gala, which made it perfect. The next day, she asked Ms. Chen to find her the sheet music. The woman's eyes widened. That's an extremely challenging piece. Are you sure? I'm sure, May said, a new confidence in her voice. The final week before the gala was brutal. Me practiced 12 hours a day, her meals forgotten, sleep snatched in short bursts on the practice room couch. The Mendelssohn was as demanding as she remembered. Technically complex, emotionally exhausting. Her fingers stumbled over the fast passages, her bow arm ached from the sustained notes. But slowly, impossibly, it began to come back to her. Not just the notes, but the feeling behind them. The way the music had once poured through her like water, her instrument merely a channel for something larger than herself. 3 days before the gala, Director Wang came to hear her progress. She played a simpler piece for him, a student etude that she could now execute perfectly. That will be adequate, he said when she finished. Nothing fancy, nothing challenging. Just get through it without embarrassing us. May nodded obediently, but inside she had already made her decision. She would play the Mendelssohn or nothing at all. The night before the gala, she received an unexpected visitor. The young girl with round glasses, the student she had advised in the hallway weeks ago, stood shyly at the practice room door. I heard you practicing yesterday, she said. It was beautiful. Thank you, May replied, surprised. Ms. Chen told me your story, about how you used to play and why you stopped. The girl hesitated. I wanted you to know that I'm struggling too. My parents work 3 jobs to pay for my lessons, and sometimes I think I should quit to help them. May set down her violin. Music is a gift, she said gently. If you have it, honor it. There will always be reasons to stop. Money, time, responsibilities. But if music lives in your heart, you must find a way to let it out. She smiled sadly. I learned that lesson too late. It's not too late, the girl insisted. Everyone's talking about your performance tomorrow. After the girl left, May practiced the Mendelssohn one final time, pouring everything she had into it, all the joy of her youth, the pain of her sacrifice, the years of silent longing. When she finished, the room seemed to vibrate with more than just the fading notes. For the first time in 20 years, she felt whole. The day of the gala arrived with a flurry of activity. The academy gleamed from top to bottom. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, and staff hurried about in formal attire. May spent the morning cleaning as usual, ignoring the whispers that followed her through the hallways. At noon, Ms. Chen found her. You need to get ready, she said, handing May a garment bag. I borrowed this from my sister. It should fit. Inside was a simple black dress, elegant enough for a performance but not so fancy that it would seem presumptuous. Me touched it gratefully. Thank you for your kindness. Just play like you did yesterday, Ms. Chen said with a wink. I want to collect on my bet. As evening approached, May changed into the dress in the small staff bathroom. Her hands trembled as she pinned up her hair. The face in the mirror looked both strange and familiar. The girl she had been and the woman she had become, merged into someone new. From the concert hall came the sounds of guests arriving, the murmur of conversation, occasional laughter. She peeked through the stage door curtain and saw Thomas Harrington holding court in the center of the room, gesturing dramatically as his friends laughed. His father stood nearby speaking with Director Wang, both men serious and formal. Her name was last on the program, after all the talented students had performed. A special edition announced by Thomas himself as Our Own Cinderella Story, From Mops to Music. As the evening progressed, May waited backstage, the borrowed violin clutched in her hands. She listened to the young musicians play, their fresh talent, their well-trained technique. They received polite, appreciative applause. Then it was her turn. Thomas stepped onto the stage with a smirk barely hidden behind a veneer of charity. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our final performer, someone who proves that music belongs to everyone at Wellington Academy, even those who serve behind the scenes. Please welcome our very own custodian, Violin. The audience applauded with curious restraint as May walked onto the stage, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. The bright lights blinded her, the sea of expectant faces blurred together. She caught a glimpse of Thomas's satisfied smile, of Director Wang's tense expression. She raised the violin to her chin, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. The moment of truth had arrived. The concert hall fell silent as May stood center stage. The weight of hundreds of eyes pressed against her skin. In the front row, Thomas Harrington leaned forward with a barely concealed smile, ready for the entertainment he had orchestrated. Next to him, his father checked his watch, perhaps already thinking of the next engagement on his calendar. May's hands trembled slightly as she positioned the violin under her chin. The familiar pressure against her collarbone steadied her. She closed her eyes, shutting out the audience, the academy, the years of doubt. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. The safe choice, the student etude director Wang had approved, beckoned like an easy path. But then she thought of the betting pool, of Thomas's smug certainty of her failure, of the young student watching from backstage with hope in her eyes. May drew a deep breath and began to play the Mendelssohn. The opening notes filled the hall. Tentative at first, a thread of sound so delicate it seemed to quiver in the air. A few whispers rustled through the audience. Someone coughed. In the third row, Director Wang straightened in alarm, recognizing the piece she had chosen against his instructions. But May didn't see him. She had fallen into the music, into a place she hadn't visited in 20 years. By the eighth bar, her body remembered what her mind had forgotten. The precise angle of her wrist, the pressure needed for each note, the subtle vibrato that gave the melody its voice. As the first movement gathered momentum, May's confidence grew. Her fingers, stiff and uncertain during weeks of practice, now flew across the strings with growing assurance. The music poured from her like water breaking through a long-sealed dam. In the front row, Thomas Harrington's smirk faded. He leaned over to whisper something to his friend, but she hushed him with an impatient hand, her eyes fixed on May. By the middle of the first movement, the entire hall had gone completely silent. The rustling programs, the discreet coughs, the shifting in seats all stilled. Even the servers at the back of the hall, carrying trays of champagne for the reception to follow, stood frozen, watching. May's eyes remained closed, but she could feel the shift in the room, the initial curiosity giving way to surprise, then to something deeper. Her fingers found each note without hesitation now, her bow arm moving with fluid grace. The years melted away with each measure. She was no longer Mei Lin the cleaner, but Mei Hua Lin the violinist, the girl who had once been destined for concert halls far grander than this. As she approached the cadenza, that moment in the concerto where the violin speaks alone, without accompaniment, she opened her eyes at last. The bright lights blinded her for a second, but then her vision cleared and she saw the audience. Their faces had transformed. Gone were the polite, bored expressions of wealthy patrons enduring a charity obligation. Instead, she saw wonder, confusion, and dawning appreciation. The cadenza flowed from her fingers like a confession, all the joy and pain of her life, the dreams surrendered, the quiet dignity of her years of sacrifice. The notes climbed higher, reaching toward something just beyond grasp, then cascading down in a shower of sound so pure it seemed to crystallize the air around her. In the third row, Director Wang sat rigidly, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Ms. Chen dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Near the back, Mr. Patel stood with arms crossed, a proud smile on his face. And in the wings, barely visible in the shadow of the curtain, the young student with round glasses watched with parted lips and shining eyes. When May launched into the final movement, the most technically challenging part of the concerto, something remarkable happened. She began to enjoy herself. A slight smile touched her lips as her fingers danced through passages that had once seemed impossibly difficult. There was freedom in this moment, a wild, unexpected joy in reclaiming what had been lost. The audience sensed it too. The energy in the room shifted again from surprise to genuine delight. In the front row, Richard Harrington leaned forward, his attention fully captured. Only his son remained unmoved, his face now set in a hard, unfriendly stare. As May approached the conclusion, time seemed to slow. Each note hung in the air a fraction longer, each phrase built with careful intent toward the final triumphant declaration. When she played the last note, strong, clean, and resolute, the sound lingered in the perfect acoustics of the hall, a final statement that seemed to say, "I am still here. I have always been here." For 3 heartbeats after the music ended, absolute silence reigned. May lowered her violin slowly, suddenly aware again of where she was, of the borrowed dress, of the hundreds of strangers watching her. Then someone in the back stood up. Then another person. And another. Suddenly the entire hall erupted in applause. Not the polite, measured applause of earlier performances, but a thunderous, spontaneous ovation. People rose to their feet, calling out in appreciation. Someone whistled sharply through their fingers. A woman in an evening gown pressed her hands to her heart, tears streaming down her face. May stood motionless, overwhelmed by the response. This wasn't what she had expected. She had hoped at best to avoid humiliation, to play well enough that Thomas Harrington couldn't mock her. But this wall of sound, this standing crowd was beyond anything she had imagined. Director Wang was on his feet now too, his initial alarm replaced by something like awe. Ms. Chen was practically jumping up and down, turning to tell anyone who would listen. "That's our May. She works with us." Only Thomas remained seated, his arms folded tightly across his chest, his face flushed with what might have been anger or embarrassment or both. The applause continued, showing no signs of fading. Richard Harrington turned to his son, saying something that made Thomas shrink slightly in his seat. Then the elder Harrington stepped forward, climbing the short stairs to the stage. He approached May with an expression of genuine admiration. "Ms. Lin," he said, taking her free hand in both of his. "That was extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. Where did you study?" Before she could answer, the young student with round glasses rushed onto the stage, forgetting all protocol in her excitement. "Ms. Lin, that was amazing. You played it perfectly, even the cadenza." More people were approaching the stage now. Other students, faculty members, guests. Director Wang hurried up, inserting himself between May and Richard Harrington. "Mr. Harrington, I had no idea Ms. Lin was so accomplished. What a wonderful surprise for us all." May barely heard them. The room seemed to spin slightly, the faces blurring together. After years of invisibility, of being overlooked and dismissed, all these eyes were suddenly on her. All these voices speaking her name with respect. It was disorienting, overwhelming. A firm hand touched her elbow. Mr. Patel had made his way through the crowd. "Come," he said gently. "You need air." He guided her off the stage and through a side door away from the pressing crowd and excited voices. In the quiet hallway, May leaned against the wall, breathing deeply. "You did well," Mr. Patel said simply. "Very well." "I never expected," she began, but couldn't find the words to continue. "Sometimes our old selves find ways to remind us who we really are," he said. "My mother used to say that." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Through the closed door, they could hear the continued buzz of conversation, the excitement still rippling through the crowd. The door opened, and Ms. Chen poked her head out. "May, you have to come back in. People are asking for you. The Harringtons want to speak with you personally." She was practically glowing with vicarious pride. "And I've already collected my winnings from the betting pool. $500. We're splitting it, of course." May smiled weakly. "I need a minute." "Take your time," Ms. Chen said, though her excited energy suggested she thought no one should need any time at all after such a triumph. "But don't take too long. This is your moment." After she disappeared back through the door, Mr. Patel looked at May curiously. "Are you not happy? You played beautifully. You showed them all who you really are." May touched the violin in her hands, tracing its curves thoughtfully. "I'm not sure who I really am anymore. For 20 years I've been someone else. Perhaps you've been both all along," he suggested. "The cleaner and the musician. The practical woman and the artist. One doesn't erase the other." Before she could respond, the door opened again. This time it was the young student with round glasses, looking slightly embarrassed to have followed her out. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she said shyly, "but I wanted to say thank you for showing me it's possible." "What's possible?" May asked. "To keep the music inside you even when life gets hard. To find your way back to it." The girl twisted her hands together nervously. "My parents want me to study something practical in college. They say music isn't a reliable future, but after seeing you tonight, I think maybe the music never really leaves you, even if you have to set it aside for a while. May felt tears prick her eyes. It never leaves, she agreed softly. But don't wait 20 years to find your way back like I did. The student nodded seriously, then slipped back through the door, leaving May and Mr. Patel alone again. You should go back in, he told her. Face your admirers. Answer their questions. Let them see the real Mei Lin. And who is that? She asked half to herself. He smiled. I think that's what you're about to find out. Taking a deep breath, May straightened her borrowed dress, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and opened the door. The light and sound washed over her as she stepped back into a world that had suddenly, irrevocably changed. A world where Mei Lin the cleaner had become Mei Lin the violinist once more. And somewhere in the crowd, Thomas Harrington watched her return, his cruel joke transformed into something he had never intended, a second chance. The morning after the gala, May woke to the unfamiliar sound of her phone ringing. Bleary-eyed, she fumbled for it on her nightstand. Hello? May, have you seen it? Ms. Chen's voice was bubbling with excitement. You're all over the internet. What? May sat up, suddenly wide awake. Someone recorded your performance last night and shared it online. It's gone. What do the young people say? Viral. Thousands of views already. May tried to process this information. But why would anyone? Because you were magnificent. Oh, and the Academy's phone has been ringing nonstop this morning. Reporters wanting to talk to you. People asking if you give lessons. Even the National Symphony called. The world seemed to be spinning too fast. Just 3 weeks ago, May had been invisible, a woman with a mop and a bucket who faded into the background of other people's lives. Now strangers on the internet were watching her play? The National Symphony was calling? I need to get ready for work, she said, falling back on routine as an anchor. Work? Oh no, Director Wang told me to tell you not to come in today. He wants to meet with you at 10 o'clock in his office instead. Ms. Chen lowered her voice to a dramatic whisper. I think they're going to offer you a teaching position. After hanging up, May sat on the edge of her bed staring at the wall. Her fingers still ached pleasantly from last night's performance, her body humming with the memory of the music. For 20 years she had locked that part of herself away. Now it was free, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what that meant. At 10 o'clock sharp, she found herself in Director Wang's office. Gone was his cold formality from their last meeting. Today he greeted her with effusive warmth. Ms. Lin, please sit down. Tea? He gestured to an elegant pot on his desk, nothing like the chipped mug she usually drank from in the break room. Thank you, she said cautiously, taking the offered cup. I'll get straight to the point, Director Wang said, folding his hands on his desk. Your performance last night was extraordinary, simply extraordinary. It revealed a talent that, frankly, we would be fools not to nurture. He slid a folder across the desk toward her. Inside was an employment contract. We would like to offer you a position as an associate violin instructor at Wellington. The salary would be triple what you currently make as part of our maintenance staff. You would have your own studio, access to our facilities, and a small starter group of students. What do you say? May stared at the contract, her heart racing. This is very generous. Not generous. Strategic. Director Wang smiled. Richard Harrington was extremely impressed with you. He suggested creating a special scholarship program for talented musicians from disadvantaged backgrounds. He wants you to help identify and mentor these students. And his son? He couldn't help asking. What does Thomas think of this plan? Director Wang's smile tightened slightly. Thomas has returned to his business interests overseas. His father was not pleased with his behavior. Before May could respond, there was a knock at the door. Ms. Chen poked her head in. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the reporter from the Classical Music Review is here for Ms. Lin's interview. And the photographers from the Arts Weekly just arrived as well. Director Wang stood up. Take your time with the contract, Ms. Lin. We can discuss details later. For now, your public awaits. He said it jokingly, but there was truth beneath his words. Somehow, overnight, May had acquired a public. The next week passed in a blur. Interviews, photo sessions, calls from orchestras and music schools. Old classmates from the conservatory reached out, having recognized her from the viral video. Her small apartment filled with flowers from admirers and notes from strangers who had been touched by her story. Through it all, May felt strangely detached, as if watching someone else's life unfold. The constant attention exhausted her. She missed the simplicity of her cleaning routine, the quiet evenings, the invisibility she had grown accustomed to. 10 days after the gala, she received an unexpected visitor at her apartment. Richard Harrington stood awkwardly at her door, looking out of place in his expensive suit amid the shabby hallway of her building. "Ms. Lynn, may I come in? I promise not to take much of your time." She invited him into her small living room, suddenly conscious of the peeling paint and worn furniture. "I wanted to speak with you personally," he said, declining her offer of tea, "about what happened at the gala." "Your son was only trying to have some fun," May said carefully. "He didn't know—" "My son was being cruel," Richard interrupted firmly. "There's no excuse for it. I raised him better than that." He looked genuinely troubled, but in a strange way his poor behavior led to something remarkable. "Your gift might have remained hidden otherwise." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This is a personal check to cover the cost of a proper instrument. The academy tells me you've been using a student violin for your lessons." May began to protest, but he held up his hand. "Please consider it my apology on behalf of my family." After he left, May opened the envelope. The amount on the check made her gasp. It was enough for a professional quality instrument with money left over. The kind of violin she had dreamed of as a girl. That evening, she walked through the quiet halls of the academy, running her fingers along the familiar walls. She had been given a key to the front door now, allowed to come and go as a teacher rather than waiting for her evening cleaning shift. She found herself in practice room 12, sitting in the silence. So much had changed so quickly. The academy had hired a new person to take over her cleaning duties. Tomorrow she would teach her first official class. The young girl with the round glasses had specifically requested to be her student. Part of her mourned the simple life she was leaving behind. There had been peace in that invisibility, a certain freedom in being overlooked. Mr. Patel found her there, sitting alone in the dark practice room. He switched on the light and sat beside her on the piano bench. "Having second thoughts?" he asked gently. "I'm not sure I can be who they want me to be," she admitted. "A prodigy, a teacher, an inspiration. What if I'm just a cleaning woman who happens to play the violin?" "You are both and neither," he said wisely. "We are all more than the boxes others put us in." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "I heard about the scholarship program," Mr. Patel said finally. "For musicians who might not otherwise have a chance. Mr. Harrington's idea. But you'll be running it." He looked at her knowingly. "Think of the lives you'll change, the talent you'll uncover, the dreams you'll save." May thought of her own interrupted journey, the 20 years of silence. "I could help them find their way back to the music sooner than I did." Exactly. The next morning, May stood nervously outside her new studio. Inside, 5 students waited for their first lesson with her. She touched the door handle, suddenly unsure. What right did she have to teach? She had abandoned music for 20 years. There were gaps in her knowledge, techniques she had never mastered. As she hesitated, she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she saw the cleaning woman who had taken her position, an older woman with kind eyes and work-worn hands. "Good luck on your first day, teacher," the woman said with a small bow. "We are all proud of you." May looked at her, really looked at her. How many people had she passed without truly seeing during her years of feeling invisible? "Thank you," she said, meaning it deeply. "What's your name?" "Lynn," the woman replied. "Like you," May smiled at the coincidence. "When you clean the practice rooms in the evening, Lynn, feel free to try the instruments if you'd like." The woman's eyes widened slightly, then crinkled with understanding. "Perhaps someday," she said before continuing down the hallway with her cart. Watching her go, May felt something settle inside her. The world was full of hidden talents, buried gifts, second chances waiting to happen. Her journey wasn't just about reclaiming her own music. It was about creating space for others to find theirs. She opened the door to her studio where her students waited. The young girl with round glasses sat nearest the door, violin already in position, eyes bright with anticipation. "Good morning," May said, her voice steady and sure. "Today, we begin." And as she raised her new violin, a beautiful instrument worthy of concert halls, she felt not like an imposter, but like exactly who she was meant to be. Not just May the cleaner or May the musician, but Maylin in her complete complex wholeness, a woman who had lost her way and found it again, returning to herself with wisdom that could only be gained through the journey away and back.